Welcome to the J.D. Levy and Associates Calibration Point Podcast. Our podcasts are designed to bring a conversational exploration of key topics that we believe will provide value and insight to those serving in the nonprofit sector. We will highlight new developments in the field, latest research, and things we're learning from our own clients that we can share.
I want to welcome everybody to joining us for this month's Calibration Point. I'm excited to have Dave Engbrecht with us. Dave is chair of a client that we have worked with for a lot of years. He's a friend. He has over 5 decades of leadership and organizational experience in numerous areas in the nonprofit sector, specifically working in a nuanced area with churches. And right now, in kind of semi-retirement, Dave, if that's accurate, he's serving as leadership counsel and culture counsel on doing some consulting with an organization he's been a part of as well. And was just excited to have you come in, Dave, to talk about the science of board leadership, the heart of board leadership. And you would agree and kind of think about board leadership in a lot of similarities that I do, in that best practices aren't always best. And as you and I talk about this, you really have a great insight into what I would call the soft side of leadership and board leadership that actually is the game changer for leadership, and not letting it be some kind of tactical experience, but rather what is it that sews leadership together. So thank you for taking the time to be with us. Super excited. So I'm just going to throw it out to you to get us started. When we think about this topic of the heart of board leadership, the core elements of successful board leadership, what, with all of your experience and wisdom and expertise, what really stands out to you?
Well, Jamie, I am intrigued by the science and the methodology of good governance. I've worked with so many organizations, been a part of so many, and I think it's just absolutely amazing and beautiful when a board or a governance group operates in a healthy way, and it's pretty ugly when they don't operate in a healthy way. So I've witnessed some head-on collision, and I've also witnessed things that are beautiful. Jamie, to me, it's kind of like an orchestra. When all the pieces come together, the brass, the winds, percussion, it sounds so beautiful. But boy, you get one of those out of sync and it goes south fast, and it can be pretty ugly. It can be worse than a 6th grade band concert. And so I love good governance and good leadership. And so there are some ingredients that I try to work with. And as I work with organizations, I'm a part of them, lead them, there's some things I really think are critical and important. And the first one that I would bring to you is this thing of making sure every board or group has good clarity. Just good clarity on role clarity. What are the expectations?
Yep.
Seems to me when leaders don't have clarity as to their role, they kind of get outside the lines. They don't stay in their lanes. And if you as a leader of a group don't understand your role correctly, you'll either control or neglect. Those are kind of the 2 ditches that we see board leadership get into, where they either neglect, don't do their job, or else they think they're in charge. They think they're the CEO.
Yeah. That's really good. And I like you're right. I like your identification of the extremes. So people listening would probably say, well, yeah, like we have clarity because the IRS tells us what we're supposed to do. How do you, when you think about true role clarity, like you're talking about, like truly clarity of the body of leadership, where in your experience does that get formed and set the best?
Well, it's interesting because there's a relationship between the CEO and the board chair, a relationship between the CEO and the board members. Board members, a lot of times, if they come out of an entrepreneurial background, take a very strong controlling thing. And boy, this is the way it's got to get done. And they're used to being able to say, let's do this now. They don't understand the process. And so that relationship of clarity is so important between the CEO and the board chair. And they have got to be clear. We always say our board has one employee, and that's the CEO.
Right.
They don't manage downline from that. And if they get too involved downline from that, it's going to be chaos. Obviously, a lot of my work has been in local churches, and I see a board member there who simply says, well, I want to work with the youth pastor. I'm upset at someone working as an office administrator. Bad move. we have one employee as a board, and that's the CEO. So just clarity that they build so that they don't get out of their lane.
Yeah, that's really good. Recently, I had that conversation with a couple board leaders that were wanting to look for a rationale on why they should be able to help manage and hire operational positions within the organization. And to your point, the IRS put some pretty good foreshadowing on that, but there's legal precedent behind that understanding that the board has one employee and there's operational precedent, let alone best practices. And I mean, it really is something that's very critical to your point that they have clarity on who is their responsibility. And the other, Dave, kind of that point as well to just build on that is, the nonprofit organization is owned by the community. And what I've seen, kind of to your point, is that sometimes the over controlling board starts to feel like they own this entity and they don't. We still, at the end of the day, no matter what role we take as a board member, we're subject to the directive of a community-based organization and its mission and its vision together.
That's a great thought. And one of the things I like to tell boards is you are responsible to make sure that you are staying mission aligned. That is this organization aligning with its mission, staying on mission. And you're right. Too much ownership can create a real problem. It's really more about stewardship. You are stewarding the organization for the greater community.
Yeah, that's a really good follow-up word on when you think about role clarity and just clarity of the body of leadership and understanding what are the implications of stewardship. I like that a lot. Okay, so we got clarity.
Okay, here's a second word. I'll give you, and that's culture. This one I'm really big on. Every organization, every board, every governance group develops a culture. It's how they do business. And good boards have a healthy culture. Let me just kind of give you a couple things that I've noticed in culture. Governance boards learn to need how to police themselves. For example, there's rogue board members that just get way out of line. They just get off the rails and they throw a little temper tantrum. I always say with the boards I work with, let's have the meeting after the meeting, during the meeting. A lot of times after meetings are over, 2 or 3 board members meet outside the parking lot and I should have said this. I'm mad about this. How about if we do that during the meeting?
Yeah.
And so one of the things I like in culture is at the end of every meeting where a board says, hey, let's talk about how we did in this meeting. How did we do? Everybody share what you needed to share? Are we all clear? Is there anything that we're going to meet in the parking lot about that maybe we should just take care of right now? And
Love
so
it.
I'm really insistent on trying to get a board to just police itself well. I love this. Jamie, you and I talked about this before. I think it's a Drucker phrase. I love it. Culture eats strategy for lunch every day.
Yeah.
And that is so true. And if you don't have a healthy culture in your group, in your board, in your governance teams, it's going to bite you and it'll be bad. Now, one of the things I've discovered is if we can get boards away on retreats outside of a boardroom, interacting with each other, we can help build a healthy culture on how we're going to do business. So I would always say to every group, tell me how your culture works. Is it healthy? Is it good?
Yeah, that's really good. When you look at the 3 most dominant forms of group dysfunction, so pluralistic ignorance, diffusion of decision-making responsibility, and groupthink, it's fascinating, and it goes right to your point, Dave. The number one way to protect a group of any kind or a team from group dysfunction is social connectivity of the members. And it doesn't mean they're out bowling every Friday night, but they know one another. And to your point, if we're never engaging them outside the boardroom, how do we build relationship?
And I've discovered with the groups I've worked with that the more we do that chemistry thing, and that may be the other C word I should use, the more we do that, the healthier the board's going to be. Because then we can have hard discussions and we know each other well enough. So I guess, Jamie, I was going to use a third C word, and that was compassionate relationships. Maybe the word we ought to use is the word chemistry.
I like that.
Healthy boards have good chemistry together. If you get a bunch of people that all think the same and act the same, you're gonna have error. And I always like to have some late adapters as a part of every board because I know if I can bring them along, we're going to be fine. If you have all early adapters, you're going to get in trouble. And so we like to do that. And we like to have good diversity in our governance groups, whether we have
Yeah.
someone with an accounting background, someone with an entrepreneurial background, just making sure we've got great chemistry. And Jamie, one of the things I like that you do is you press for this whole thing of relational equity, making sure that our relationships with each other are strong enough that we can complement each other.
Yeah.
That's so critical in board. So critical in
Yeah.
board.
I really like your point about chemistry within the team, chemistry within the board. And, that does, I mean, it build it's an outgrowth of culture and clarity. Like how can I really harmonize chemistry if I don't have clarity of role? And if I don't have a focus on culture, how we're building traditions, norms, emotions, connection, and being able to lead as a team, it's hard to build chemistry. But when you think about chemistry in relationship, if I were to apply that to board recruitment, now like things like candidacy and on ramping, my pipeline of leadership, like that takes a whole nother approach if I add the word chemistry in.
Yeah, chemistry is so important. And a lot of times on boards, there are people that don't say a lot. They're
Hmm.
quiet. And one of the things I like is good board governance brings them into the discussion and learns how to take people who tend to dominate and kind of hold them a little bit and then say to others, hey, join us on this one. What do you think? And that's that whole thing of chemistry, knowing who you need to bring into the discussion. It's like the old E.F. Hutton commercials, when they speak, everybody does listen, but they don't speak a lot. And I
Yep.
love watching boards that have good chemistry and
Yeah.
good health as they go with it.
And I would say, kind of to your experience, and maybe you could talk a little bit about it. So, one of the things that, I mean, I've seen research on it, we see it in our practice, is that a core litmus test of board health is the chemistry and relationship between the CEO, executive director, and the board chair. And then to your point, the rest of the board. And I think if you could expound a little bit just to reinforce that when we talk about chemistry, we can't leave out the CEO or the executive director of the organization.
And that is absolutely critical. If if the CEO and the board chair do not have a good relationship, it will show up in a meeting. And they need to spend time together. They need to make sure, again, they each understand their lane. They understand their roles. That relationship is so important. And one of the things I've discovered in the groups that I've chaired, that the stronger my relationship is with the CEO, the healthier the board will function.
Yeah.
And that takes time. That takes time. Sometimes, Jamie, we fill the blanks in wrongly in relationships. And so having those hard discussions, you've heard this said, we have to go the last 10% in our discussions. And so a
Right.
lot of times we'll say, and some of us, if we're conflict avoidance, don't want to have those conversations. So one of the things I've learned is learn how to say to a CEO, hey, I'm going to go the last 10% on this one, which basically signals to him, this is a little tough for me, but I want to do that. In fact, we have one on our team here we use where we say, I'm going to go the last 1%, which means this is super tough. But that's how you get chemistry and you learn how to be honest with each other.
Oh, I love that. Let's go the last 10%. Let's go the last 1%. And I'm still stuck on something you said, which is such a great kind of theme for a board meeting. And that's let's have the pre and post board discussions in the board meeting. And to the point of that, Dave, like, I mean, I just think about all the board conversations I've had where those meetings, who knows what's happening in them, but they create a narrative around culture, they create a narrative around clarity, and they create a narrative around chemistry. Whether there's anything going on or not, people start to create their own narrative around those conversations, even just because of the optics. I so love your point on that. Like that ought to be like at the top of every board meeting agenda.
Well, I love the phrase, have the meeting after the meeting, during the meeting. The meeting that
Yeah.
happens, have it during the meeting. And I like a lot of times as we close a meeting, when I'm chair of board, to say, okay, let's have the meeting now that's going to take place outside this room. Let's talk about how do we do? What didn't you say that you should have said? Are we all clear with each other? And evaluate how we did. One of the things I didn't do for so many years, Jamie, was to close a meeting by evaluating how that meeting went. I never would evaluate it. So I can't remember where I picked it up. I picked up that concept of let's put on the agenda 5-10 minutes. Let's evaluate. How'd we do? How'd we do in this meeting? Are we all clear? Did everything said that need to be said? How are we doing? So have the meeting, after the meeting, during the meeting. That's the little phrase I love to harp on.
I think that's great. And I would just add into that. And so and you know this better than I do with all of your experience, but there is this often kind of misguided perspective that a board chair is just supposed to step back and be the facilitator as opposed to engage in content of the meeting. And what I've found is the most successful board chairs are those that do know how to orchestrate, but they also know how to apply themselves into conversation, into relationships, and to this point, be able to ensure that we're having the meeting that happens outside the meeting in the meeting, because the board chair is holding people accountable because they want them to find their greatest potential as leaders, not because they're throwing out a big stick.
I love it when boards learn how to police themselves, where one member says to another member, ooh, that wasn't your finest moment. Or a member says, you should have spoke up on that in the meeting.
Yeah.
Healthy boards, healthy culture, they learn how to police and coach each other. And I love that. As a board chair, I see myself kind of as like a leader of an orchestra. If I can get the various components to come in right and do that right, it's going to make beautiful music and good decisions.
I think that's excellent. Yeah, that's a good place to close on this. Again, back to your visual of the orchestra. And what does that look like? What's the end goal of an orchestra? What's the end goal of our team that we're trying to build? And, I think you mentioned at the beginning as part of our opening, going back to mission, we talk about clarity. And what I take from that as well is never forgetting at the end of the day, who pays the price for good governance? And it's not the individuals on the board, right? It's the people that we're serving. Yeah, Dave, thank you. This has just been phenomenal.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
and thank you for the way you coach. You do your work with excellence.
Well, I really appreciate that. It's a passion and a calling, and this has been great. I've picked up some things I haven't thought about. So this is just thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the J.D. Levy & Associates Calibration Point Podcast. If you have comments or ideas for future episodes, please reach out using the contact page on our website, jdlevyassociates.com.